Welcome to another edition of Law and Society. It's where legal and social issues come together. Andrew Stevenson is our attorney, our in-house guru, our expert on these things. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Mark.
We are continuing from where we left off on the last show, our October show, which was Miranda. And we're going to continue it today with the number. This is on your top 10 list. The number one thing that can get you thrown in jail.
Number one thing to get you thrown in jail is talk to the police without an attorney.
Right. So let's kind of recap what we talked about last show.
Last time we talked about if you've been arrested, if you are in custody, and we discussed the Miranda rules. And just in case you missed the last show, the Miranda rule essentially is as follows: is that if you are in custody, you've been arrested, you're in the jail, the police are required to read you your Miranda rights if they want to use what you say in response to their questioning in court. Mm-hmm. So they're not required to read you Miranda rights if you are not in custody, or just because you've been arrested doesn't mean they have to read you your Miranda rights. Only if they want to question you and then use your answers later and you're in custody. If you ever find yourself in this situation, the four magic words that you should say are very simply, I want a lawyer. Mm-hmm. It has to be direct. It has to be succinct. And once you use those four magic words, then the police must cease all questioning and cannot do so until you have a lawyer.
Okay. Even if they say something like, well, you're not under arrest, that's not questioning, that's a statement, right?
Right, but if you're under arrest, they can't tell you you're not under arrest.
Right, but what if they're just, what if, okay, we're going to get into
that's
all
what
of
we're
this.
going to talk about today.
We're going to get into the slippery stuff here.
Is when, what I call, it's a voluntary statement.
Mm-hmm. All right,
A voluntary statement is one in which you're not under arrest, and the police will probably emphasize multiple times that you're free to go if you wish.
Yeah.
And the common scenario is as follows. The police will knock on a suspect's door. They will talk with them for a little bit there, and they'll say, do you know so-and-so? And the individual will say yes. They say, well, there's a couple of issues that have developed. We'd really like for you to come down to the station and answer a few questions. Would you mind to come with us? And most people, for some reason, say sure. And they take them down to the police station. They lead them into a room. They close the door, and they say, now we want to make sure you understand that you're free to go. At that point, they don't have to read you your Miranda rights because you're not in custody.
You're not under arrest.
You're not in arrest. You're not in custody. Right. And then they begin an interview. And then about an hour or so later, they let you go. You go home. And what happens is what you say is completely available to be used if charges are brought against the person.
Yeah, because you've made voluntary statements at that point.
It's voluntary.
Because
the police haven't coerced it. They haven't forced it. You have voluntarily provided information to law enforcement.
Trying to be helpful.
Be helpful. The other common one is that the police are too lazy to go to the door, or they're too busy, and they simply call people up.
Yep.
And they do this on a freakishly high level. A number of times they call people up and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this subject. Would you please come down to the station? And they give them an appointment time, like a dentist or a doctor. Yeah. If you give someone an appointment time, they feel obligated as though they have to go because it's an appointment. Right. And you can't miss an appointment. And people come down and engage in voluntary statements with the police. And over my career, I have tried to figure out why people do this.
Yeah, why would you? I mean, I know that, no one wants to look guilty, right?
That's the number one thing that people tell me is they simply say, listen, if I don't go, I'm going to look guilty. I'm going to look like I have something to hide. Well, to which I always say to them, are you going to look more guilty sitting next to me in an orange jumpsuit in a courtroom, or simply saying, I'd prefer to talk to you, but I'd like to have a lawyer with me when I do so? And the police haven't come to your door to talk to you about this subject because they picked your name out of the phone book.
Right.
They are there because they probably believe that you are the primary person.
Yeah, they like you as a suspect.
They like you as a suspect, and they would like to make their world a lot easier by having you tell them that they are right in their suspicions.
And there are people that, that get in these situations that, they tell their side and they think, well, if I'm not guilty, they don't think they're guilty of anything.
Right. They also believe that the number two thing that I hear is if I tell them my side of the story, that'll be the end of it.
Okay.
They will leave me alone. I will go in and explain what happened. I will explain my side of the story. And the police will listen to me, believe me, and then it will all be over, and I don't have any stress. I don't have any anxiety.
So that line, we want to just we're just trying to clear some things up in this case here.
Yeah, that's something they say. It minimizes the risk of speaking to the police. It minimizes the potential consequences because they're just clearing things up. If they came and said, listen, you're a suspect, we'd like to talk with you. We hope you provide inconsistent statements. And based on those, we're going to arrest you and put you in jail. No one's going to come down and talk to him. Well, actually, some people would, but
yeah, a few people
would
because of the next reason, right?
The next reason, and the third thing that I hear from people is I hear that they are curious to know what's going on. They say, "Well, I didn't know what it was about. I wanted to know what the police knew. I didn't know why they would come to my door," and they believe if they go in, that the police are going to provide them with all the information.
And lay out the case for them.
Lay out the case for them, and they're going to sit there and say nothing and say thank you very much and leave.
Because they need an amateur Matlock to help them, right?
Right, yes. That's not at all what happens. These situations, as I'll talk about in a little bit, are coercive. These situations, the police are in control. They are professionals. This is their job. This is what they do for a living. Detectives are detectives for a reason. And once you're in their house... they're in charge. The other thing that I hear, which is true, is I don't want to go to jail.
And again, this is, if I don't come in voluntarily, they're going to come arrest me, right?
That's what the police say. And they're allowed to say this. They say to people, listen, I can arrest you right now if I want to. But what I'd like to have you do is come down to the station with me. Let's clear it up. And if you do, I promise you, I will not arrest you today. You will go home. And you know what? They don't lie about that.
Now, is can I arrest you immediately? Is that true? Can they arrest them?
Yeah, they could. Probably.
Place them under arrest? They probably have enough probable cause to do that?
Interviewing the suspect is usually the last step in an investigation. Okay. At least it should be.
Okay.
Police do their background. They will speak with alleged victims. They should gather physical evidence, talk to collateral witnesses, get records, documents. And then they put all that together to derive a suspect, and then they go to the suspect. So the suspect is the last person that they're supposed to be interviewing.
Right.
And so by the time they get to you, they have already formed an opinion.
So the shred of truth is that they won't arrest you that day. They'll let you go home, generally.
They may come back in a week or a month or 6 months, but they usually let them go home.
All right.
Now, if it's more serious crime such as murder, they're probably not letting you go home. But in 99% of the time, they do.
Right.
And then the last reason that I hear, and this is probably the most problematic one, is that I didn't do anything wrong. What could go wrong with me talking to the police? Which is a fair statement.
Right.
Most people think, listen, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm innocent. It's okay if I talk to the police. To which I say those are the individuals who should be most concerned about talking to the police, because in this environment, there's a real probability that a person will get facts wrong, make an inconsistent statement, will not have all the answers and details, which is really going to make them appear guilty.
Right. They say something, slip up, and then, well, you told us this. They start comparing the statements and saying you're inconsistent in your...
And what we have, which I'll talk about in the second part today, it leads to false confessions.
Right. Well, you mentioned My Cousin Vinny in your notes.
Yes.
One of my favorite movies.
Yes, and because there's a classic line where the sheriff's on the stand and My Cousin Vinny and the prosecutor says, and you were questioning the suspect and what happened? And I said to him, and you shot the clerk? And he said, I shot the clerk. Now, when he said it, the defendant said, I shot the clerk?
Yeah.
But when the detective said it on the stand, it was, I shot the clerk. So there's room for these misinterpretations, which leads me to one of my classic stories about innocent people talking to the police.
Okay.
There was a individual who, several years ago, the neighborhood kids used to hang out at his house. And they would play in his backyard, and sometimes they'd come in and watch TV and so forth. And these were teenagers. And he was he was a smoker, and the kids would try to bum cigarettes off of him.
Okay.
And sometimes he would give them cigarettes. And one day the police came and knocked on his door, and they said, do you know this young lady we'll call her Tina. do you know Tina? And he said, yes. He said, well, would you mind coming down to the station and talking to us? And okay. So he went down to the station with the police. And when they got down there, the police officer said, well, has Tina ever been to your house? And he said, yes. And has Tina ever been in your house? Yes. Have you ever given her cigarettes? Yes. Has she ever been upstairs in your bedroom? And he said, no. He says, well, she tells a very different story. She says that she came over to your house and you said that you had a carton of cigarettes for her and that she needed to come upstairs to the bedroom to get them. And that when she got up there, you told her that in order to get the cigarettes, she had to do certain things in return. And that when she said no, that you threw her down on the bed and forcibly raped her. She left your house crying, went home, told her mother the story. Her mother reported it to the police. I interviewed her, and I believe she's telling the truth. And the suspect was like, wait, no, you don't understand. I never touched this girl. And the officer said, well, I spoke to her. I believe her. She told the exact same story to her mother as she told to me. And you're nervous and you're shaking, and I'm not buying it. And the guy's like, no, seriously, I'll do anything. I didn't touch her. And he says, I'll take a polygraph. Cop says, really? He says, yeah. He says, all right, you come back here tomorrow, 10 a.m., we'll give you a polygraph. Comes back in the next day at 10 a.m., takes the polygraph, passes completely. Cop's a little bewildered at this point in time. So he brings the girl back in. Says, we got a bit of a problem here. I spoke with the suspect, and I've spoken with you, but he took and passed a polygraph yesterday. She says, well, I'll take one too. Well, you come back here the next day at 10 a.m. She comes in the next day at 10 a.m., takes the polygraph test, fails miserably. The cop says, what's going on? She says, well, I asked him for a cigarette and he wouldn't give me one. So I wanted to get him in trouble. Now, I ask you, based on these facts, I can tell you someone got arrested. Who do you think it was?
I think it was him for giving cigarettes to a minor.
You actually got it correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets accused of rape, falsely accused of rape. And he winds up getting arrested and charged with contributing to delinquency of a minor.
Yeah. Yeah, rightfully so if he went in and admitted it. Sorry.
Yeah. So even if you're innocent.
He broke rule number one.
He broke rule number one. Yeah.
We're talking with Andrew Stevenson, attorney at law. This is called Law and Society. And let me get this right. Where legal and social issues come together, StevensonCriminalDefense.com.
Yes.
You can get a hold of Andrew if you need to. And believe me, if you say those 4 words, I want a lawyer, Andrew is definitely your guy. We'll be